Hey there, Miss Lee here, and welcome to Psychology. This is Unit 1, Scientific Inquiry. This is Section 1, Why Study Psychology? What we're going to be discussing today is we're going to talk about the definition of psychology, we're going to identify the goals of psychology, and we're going to explain how psychology really is a science. So, if you haven't already, get your notes ready. First off, why do we even study psychology? Why is that a thing? Well, in my opinion, it happens to be one of the only subjects where we get a chance to talk about you, all about you. Because our definition is it's a scientific study of behavior and mental processes. We all have behaviors and we all have mental processes. For the sake of psychology, we define behavior as any action that other people can observe or measure. And some of them are a little bit tricky. So you think about the really obvious ones that if I start to laugh or I walk across the room, you know that that's a behavior. But heart rate is also a behavior. Why? Well, because we can measure it. Mental processes include both cognitive activities, such as those private, unobservable mental processes, the sensations, the perceptions, the thoughts, the problem-solving activities that we all go through, and people can't see them directly. You can't crack open your head and look in and see a thought. Another example of that would be a dream. I can't see your dreams, but so can we even measure dreaming? Well, yes, you can. You can actually hook someone up to a bunch of electrodes and we can see when someone is actually dreaming. So is dreaming a behavior? Is it a mental process? Yes. This also includes psychological constructs. So what that means is theoretical concepts that let us be able to talk about things that can't be seen or touched or measured directly. So, as you probably guessed, as psychologists, we're interested in studying things like emotions and feelings and those squishy things that we always associate with psychology. So, how do we do that? We're going to get to that in just a moment. First, the goals of psychology as a science. This is what we want to accomplish as scientists. First off, we observe things. We observe behaviors. We are able to measure those things, take them in. And then we want to describe that behavior. And we want to describe behavior in such a way that you know what I'm talking about and I know what you're talking about and everyone's on the same page. We want to explain why that stuff happens, why we do the things that we do, why animals react the way that they do. And we want to be able to predict if this happens, do you think this is going to happen? If this certain situation happens, what is the way that we predict that person is going to behave? Psychology is very interested in things like emotions. So you think about depression, for example, or anger. We want to be able to predict when those feelings come up, when those reactions happen. And last but not least, we want to be able to control for them. So we want to be able to predict, but then if you're experiencing depression, we want to be able to make those symptoms a little bit easier. We want to be able to make that anger reaction a little bit more controlled. Psychology is a social science, but it has its roots in the natural sciences like biology and chemistry, but it deals with the structure of human society and the interactions of individuals within the society, which are not always those hard sciences that we think about like biology. So it really is the interaction between those natural sciences and philosophy. So how do psychologists find answers that they're looking for? Well, we do it through research. So we give out surveys, we ask a bunch of questions, we run experiments, and through that we are collecting information, we're collecting data, we're analyzing all of what we find out, and we're coming up with possible answers. We're coming up with conclusions to that original question that we started out the whole thing with. And so we come up with a theory that we can test out. Two ways that we do this very often in psychology are through surveys and experiments. A survey is a method of collecting data that usually involves asking some sort of questions to some sort of people in some sort of particular group. And it's really as easy as that. Now, to whom we ask those questions and how we ask those questions, that's for a later video. We also conduct experiments. And going forward, you need to understand that we could use human or animal participants in our experiments. So then we come up with a theory. A theory is a statement that attempts to explain why things are the way that they are and happen the way that they do. And they're usually posed in an if-then statement. The example on your screen is, if you study, then you will get better grades. If you brush your teeth more often, then you will get fewer cavities. And this can lead eventually to a principle, which is basically just a rule or a law. An example of that would be gravity, which usually acts kind of the same way given the scenario is the same. Before we move on, let's recap. You should now be able to define psychology, identify the goals of psychology, and explain how psychology is a science. Now, if you have a few questions still from this section, or you aren't sure of certain terms, I highly suggest you go back and review the video. You can watch it as many times as you need to or want to, and pause it whenever you need to. And that's it for Unit 1, Section 1. In Section 2, we're going to be talking about the history of psychology, and I just can't wait to see you then.